Hello friends, John your whiskey neighbor here. Welcome to my kitchen table. Thought I'd shoot inside. It's not quite warm enough. It's a little bit later in the day. Today we're going to take a look at a sherried Scotch. It's kind of in the value range, which is a little bit the theme right now as we're self-isolating and it's pretty tough to make ends meet. But it's just on that edge of value. So what we're going to look at today is Berry Brothers and Rudd. It's a blended malt Scotch whiskey, and it's from their classic range. It is the Sherry Cask Matured. Thanks for staying with me. As I said in the intro, this bottle really, I may label this part of the value series, I may not, I'm not sure, because it's right on that edge. We'll talk price at the end, but basically I got this for what the Glenmorangie says on the shelf regular price for, so certainly that would be a value Scotch. However, this is not a single malt. This is, and we don't see a lot of Berry Brothers and Rudd. I understand it's actually quite common, easy to find spirit releases in the UK. They are a wine merchant from London and have been operating for, the dates on here are ridiculous, saying that they've been on number 3 St. James Street in London since 1698, which is amazing. Now, I don't know enough about their history. I do know kind of the general history of wine merchants really were the pioneers in casking and aging spirit. So many times far back in history, distilleries were making fine spirit, but they would sell it in bulk to wine merchants. It was those merchants that were really became the pioneers of aging, keeping in cask. Very long-standing history for wine merchants to obviously deal and sell wine, but also to collect spirits, younger spirits, and then age them and release them. This is from their signature, as I said, I think it's classic range. It is a blended malt. So we do know that while it's from a variety of distilleries, because it doesn't say single, it is only malt, which means it's only barley. So there's no grain whiskey in here. This one is released at 44.2%. And it doesn't give me enough information about things like, that's a nice deep dark color, but is that natural? I don't know. I could expect that from sherry for sure, but it doesn't say. Also, it doesn't say that it's not chill filtered, so I don't know that either. So really, we're just going to go at it, like, what are we tasting in this Scotch, this blended malt? What do we get from it? Because even the information on the back is just general, chosen from the best expensive ex-sherry hogsheads or something like that. Does it say? I can't remember. It said something a little bit different there. I was like, oh, that's interesting, but it doesn't say even what type of ex-sherry. So we're kind of going in blind. Let's see what we get out of this blended Scotch, though. I like this nose. It's been a while. I've been kind of in bourbon and in some other things lately. So this is a deep, dark fruit. This is, and right away hints of chocolate or nut, but a deep nut, like a walnut. I guess not deep, but I mean walnut, figgy pudding. I don't know what figgy pudding tastes like, but figs and pudding, Christmas cake. I know that. I actually, it's been a while. This nose, especially for what I take to be a pretty average malt, is, I would hold this up. If I was pouring for some new people a Scotch, I would say this is a great example of a heavily sherried Scotch. It is creamy, malty, deep fruit, that fig prune, sticky pudding. Now there's a little bit of ethanol, a little bit of alcohol, which speaks to it's probably pretty young. So, I guess if you stay in it, some of its flaws are coming out. But at first, It was rich. It was fruity. It was chocolatey already. But now some more of those faults are coming out. It is a little sharp, a little ethanol, a little alcohol. See how it tastes. Cilantro. Actually, it's quite a pleasant malt. It's, again, really deeper candied fruits. Malt. There's some cereal malt, some grain in there. Well, not grain, but that taste of maybe not breadiness. I was trying to get at what are you getting when you get, a young malt? A little bit of that, essential barley sugars. But it also has a little bit of huskier woods, darker fruits. Gives an impression of deep oak or smoke. It's not that it's very woody, but I get that with ex-sherry casking. It's something that I tend to really become aware of if it's a more heavily sherried. Like, to me, this tastes like whatever the blending is, they were all sitting in either first fill ex-sherry, which would be unlikely for a cheaper blend, or just that they spent all of their life in some kind of ex-sherry. So I'm not getting a lot of sweet vanillas or even pushing into caramels that I would be getting from ex-bourbon casks. And it is a strong enough sherry note that this is on that edge of a sherry bomb for me, which surprised me because when I picked this up, I hadn't heard anything about it. And got it for about $45 Canadian. I don't know what that is, $35 American kind of thing, which is a really great price. And I reached out to a few other whiskey folk and they said, John, that's a pretty average dram. Okay, it's an average dram, but perhaps I've been in isolation for a while. It's not bad. It actually is quite expressive for a blended sherry malt. In fact, I find the nose enveloping and interesting. The palate could use a little more spicing. It could be on that edge of bitter if I'm being critical, but I still get deep, dark fruits, figs and prunes. I kind of, what I'm thinking of. And the oaking is old, tastes old. It's not old. It's a young Scotch, it's a young whiskey, but it gives the impression of leather-bound books or, I don't know, something like that. You can tell. I really like this. And certainly for the price, it sits easily at 4 stars for me, which for the price is fantastic in my rating book. There's flaws. It's young. There's some bitterness. There's some ethanol in the nose. I can't really put this up against a really high-class single malt. And I wish I had some of my favorite younger single malts that I really go to, like a Glendronach 12-year-old. That is priced right still in my neighborhood, and it would, I think, compete very well with this. Still, I like this. Easily 4 stars. I'm happy that I have it and have been enjoying it in the last few weeks. Now, I just want to do a quick comparison to the Glenmorangie Sherry Cask Finish. Now, this is also young, even more of a bargain. I managed to get it for less than $45. It sits at the shelf at about $45. I think I got this for $35. And it is 40%, so this is 44, so it's even lower. Now it is from one distillery, so it gets to have that distinction of being a single malt, but it has spent some time in ex-bourbon and then a short finishing, probably a short 8-month finishing in sherry. And if these were both natural colors, I would say, well, that makes sense. It's a lighter color, but this is colored for sure. And since this doesn't indicate, I imagine this is colored as well. Much gentler or weaker nose. This has more light. In comparison, I get almost yellow fruits out of it. So there's some fruiting in here, but they're gentle, they're light. It's more of a higher sweetness. I could say it's a bit more vanillas. I'm not as interested as the nose. See, the palate is like, actually the palate held up in terms of some nice coating quality to it, but still very light, very gentle. It's actually smoother. I know that's not a term we like to use, but by smooth, I mean there aren't what could be offensive. This one here is, in comparison, this nose is fresh cakes and puddings and dates and figs and raisins. It is almost a completely different nose. But the palate, even though it's adding chocolates and whatnot, it does have, now that I've kind of gone back and forth, I should have cleared my palate, but it's got some bitterness to it that could be offensive. So, the Glenmorangie remains a light, gently sherry finished Scotch. I certainly can enjoy it. But in this context, if I really want to know, like give me some heavier sherry notes, some leathering, some tobacco, that kind of thing, this blended malt delivers for me, and I like it. Thanks for joining me. It is Easter weekend, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to get to a review or not. It's a great weekend to be close to family. Even if we're just doing Zoom meetings, I don't know if you guys have done that, but my extended family has picked that up, and I know that my mom, who's older and has to be isolated, appreciates seeing all the grandkids and whatnot. I hope you guys are well. My family continues to be well. I continue to be grateful for all of the frontline workers, which a friend of mine, good friend from a long time ago, reminded me that includes people like truckers. We need supplies and food, well, that would be supplies, to go into areas that might be having some significant COVID infection rates, like New York. And I heard some sad news about some truckers and how they are being exposed to the virus. But I just want to say thank you so much to all the hard work that you do, for the continued food supply that you bring for all the people in need. So thank you. And to all of you that tuned in to watch, I hope you have something fun and interesting. For me, this is a great example of a fairly heavily sherried, malted Scotch. Have a great weekend.